So Apple only has about 20% of the global market share.
Yeah.
They're saying they have 70% here. And then the DOJ did this thing where they're calling it like performance smartphones versus just like any smartphone.
Yeah. And over all these antitrust cases, the market definition is very gerrymandered.
Well, right. I mean, because it kind of has to be.
Yeah,
because that's the whole game.
That's the whole game. And then, so you'll expect in this case, as in the other cases, that the government and the defendant will spend a lot of time arguing about whether the market definition is correct.
Right. So, okay, you are talking about competitors. I guess that's true. But one of the things they focus on is switching costs. And as someone who, you mentioned we were both at Google when we acquired Android. I started at Google the year the iPhone was released. I had this hot pink Motorola Razr, which I loved. And I actually wouldn't mind going back to. I got something called a G phone, which I put in my desk drawer and thought I'd never use, which was the prototype of an Android. And then I used Google phones for 8 years. I didn't get an iPhone until I left. And at some point, I thought I actually kind of would like a Pixel. It has a great camera. I like using all of my Google apps in one place. And then the switching cost for me, which is not addressed in this litigation, but if I were doing this, I would have included it, is the goddamn cables. Like my entire junk drawer is just like a yucca mountain of USB, USB-C, Lightning. None of it's interoperable. They got rid of the headphone jack, which enrages me. And so it's just like a giant pile of white cords. And I'm thinking to myself, if I get a Pixel, then I've got to undo this whole mess of wires, and I just can't deal with it.
Well, what's funny about this? We normally trash Europe, but Europe has now required the iPhone have USB-C.
Yes.
So you actually like something Europe has done on tech regulation.
I do. I think we should regulate interoperability of cords. And you know what? I think it's a popular issue. I would like to see it picked up.
This is your platform. Cord interoperability.
Yes, cord interoperability.
Yeah.
I think
but set aside the cord thing.
Right.
How difficult was it to switch?
I didn't switch, and here's the other reason.
Okay.
I am sort of trapped with the hardware because I now have my headphones, I have CarPlay, I am somewhat trapped, and I like my iPhone.
Right.
That's the other thing. I like it. I would love the option to switch to a Pixel, but it's just not worth it. And then we have to talk about it. And it sounds so dumb, and people are mocking the DOJ brought it up, but it is a for reals thing, which is the green bubble.
I've always had a hard time getting into the green bubble social trauma, but maybe you feel closer to it. I understand that, but it's never struck me as like the basis for an antitrust complaint.
Well, it doesn't really make sense because it's not Apple hurting their own consumers, and really the only harm to Android users is shame. For having the green bubble, and there is a real.
Well, Apple argues that it's that iMessages are encrypted and SMS is not. So that's sort of that's what they're signaling to an iPhone user. That like the iMessage is encrypted. But I get
literally no one knows that. Yeah. No one who's getting a green bubble thinks, oh, it's a warning that this isn't an encrypted message.
Right.
No one thinks that.
It is an interesting choice by the Justice Department to include that issue. Yeah. Just given like the way it's sort of then been memified.
Yeah, it's been totally memified, but it is a real thing. I think we started this conversation talking about kids.
Yeah.
It matters to kids.
Yeah.
Kids do not want to be the person on the group message who's got the green bubble.
It's interesting, too, because in Europe, this is not an issue because everybody uses WhatsApp.
Right.
This is a uniquely American thing. And the interesting thing about this is Apple hasn't done anything in the U.S. differently than in Europe. So this is peculiarly American that we've ended up in this situation.